$590 billion, 183 thousand workers. 3 to 400 tons of gold, 7 years of construction. And not a single hammer was heard. 3,000 years ago, King Solomon built what may be the most expensive structure in human history. More costly than the International Space Station. More valuable than the world's tallest skyscrapers combined. A building so covered in gold that sunlight bouncing off its walls could blind you from a mile away. But here's what most people never hear. This project nearly destroyed his kingdom. The silence they built it in? Engineers today still can't fully explain how they did it. This is the story they left out. To understand what Solomon was about to attempt, you need to understand what came before. For over 400 years, God's presence among the Israelites lived in a tent, the tabernacle, portable, temporary. Built for a people who wandered the desert with no permanent home. But by 1000 BC, Israel wasn't wandering anymore. King David had united the tribes. He conquered Jerusalem. He built an empire. And David had a dream. He wanted to build God a permanent house, a temple worthy of the creator of the universe, something that would last forever. There was just one problem. God said no. Not no to the temple. No to David. The reason? David was a warrior. His hands had taken too many lives, too much blood. The temple, the house of peace, required a man of peace. That man would be his son, Solomon. The name itself comes from shalom, the Hebrew word for peace. But David didn't just hand over a dream. He handed over decades of preparation. Picture this. An aging king spending his final years not on battlefields, but in treasury rooms, counting gold, weighing silver, stockpiling bronze and iron beyond measure. From war spoils, conquered tribute, and international trade, David set aside 100,000 talents of gold, 1 million talents of silver. From his personal fortune, another 3,000 talents of the finest gold in the ancient world, Ophir gold, plus 7 Zuzan talents of refined silver. Gemstones filled entire storerooms, onyx, turquoise, marble, stones whose names we no longer even recognize. Now let's translate those ancient numbers. 1 talent equaled roughly 75 pounds. That means the gold alone totaled 3,400 metric ton. At today's gold price, that's $493 billion. Add the silver, over 34,000 metric tons, and you're looking at another $80 billion. Combined, approximately $590 billion in raw materials alone before a single worker was paid. For perspective, the International Space Station cost $150 billion. The world's most expensive building, the Abraj al-Bait clock tower in Mecca, cost $16 billion. Solomon's temple had nearly 40 times that budget, just in metal. David knew he would never see it finished. In his final address to the nation, the old king said, "I have taken great pains to provide for the temple of the Lord. Great pains. Decades of accumulation. Every conquered kingdom, every tribute payment, every trade deal, all flowing toward one single purpose, a building he would never live to see." But here's the thing about $590 billion in gold. It doesn't move itself. It doesn't cut itself. It doesn't build anything on its own. And the one material Solomon needed most? It didn't even exist in Israel. Israel had a problem. Gold? They had mountains of it. Silver overflowed the treasury. But Israel was a nation of farmers, shepherds, vintners. They raised sheep and grew olives. What they didn't have was a timber industry, master craftsmen, experience building anything monumental. And for a project of this scale, Solomon needed one material above all others: cedar. Cedar of Lebanon, the premium construction wood of the ancient world. These trees were giants. Some grew over 100 feet tall, trunks wider than a chariot. The wood was rot-resistant, aromatic, strong enough to hold massive stone structures together. It was the steel beam of antiquity, and it grew in only one place: the mountains of Phoenicia, modern-day Lebanon, over 200 miles north of Jerusalem. Territory controlled by King Hiram of Tyre. Tyre was the ancient world's shipping superpower. Phoenician vessels dominated every Mediterranean trade route. Their craftsmen were legendary, and Hiram had already supplied cedar to David years earlier. So Solomon sent a message. "You knew my father David could not build a temple because of the wars waged against him," Solomon wrote. "But now the Lord my God has given me rest. I intend to build." Hiram agreed. But this wasn't charity, this was business. The deal: Israel would pay 20,000 cores of wheat every year. That's roughly 4,400 tons of grain, plus 20,000 baths of pressed olive oil, around 440,000 liters, every single year, for 20 years. In exchange, unlimited cedar and cypress timber, gold supplements when needed, and most importantly, skilled craftsmen. The best of them was a man named Hiram Abi. Mixed heritage, Israelite mother, Tyrian father, skilled in bronze, gold, silver, iron, stone, wood, and fabric. He would oversee the most complex artistic work the ancient world had ever seen. But getting the materials was only half the problem. Moving them, that was the real nightmare. Imagine standing at Joppa Harbor, smell the salt, feel the wind off the Mediterranean. Massive cedar rafts float in from the north. Some logs weigh several tons each. They've drifted down the coastline for days. Now turn inland. See those hills shimmering in the heat? Jerusalem sits up there, 800 meters higher, 60 kilometers of rocky, climbing terrain between you and the construction site. Every single log had to make that journey. No trucks, no trains, no cranes, just ropes, wooden sledges, and human muscle. Solomon had the gold, he had the wood, he had the craftsmen, but who would actually do the work? The answer involves 183,000 people. And the truth about them? It's not comfortable to hear. 183,000 people. Let that number settle. In a nation of maybe 1 to 2 million total inhabitants, Solomon conscripted nearly 10% of the entire population for one building project. In modern American terms, that would be like mobilizing 33 million people to construct a single structure. But here's where the story gets uncomfortable. Not all workers were treated the same. The workforce was divided into rigid tiers, and your life depended on which tier you were born into. At the top, 30,000 Israelites assigned to logging operations in Lebanon. These men worked in rotating shifts, 10,000 at a time. 1 month cutting timber in the mountains, 2 months home with their families. Hard work, dangerous work, but survivable, humane even. Now look below them. 80,000 stonecutters, 70,000 carriers, 150,000 people assigned to the most brutal labor imaginable, quarrying rock, hauling it up mountainous terrain, day after day, year after year. These workers were not Israelites. They were foreigners, descendants of Canaanite peoples conquered generations earlier. And for them, no rotation, no 2 months at home, no end date, just endless work under permanent conscription. The Hebrew word is mas, forced labor. Service to the state with no choice and no escape. The Bible records this without comment, but the math is impossible to ignore. Solomon's temple, the house of the God who freed Israel from Egyptian slavery, was built substantially by slaves. Put yourself in the sandals of one of those 70,000 carriers. The sun beats down, stone digs into your shoulders. Your grandfather was Canaanite. Your father was Canaanite, and now you're spending your entire life building a temple to the God of your conquerors. What thoughts run through your mind? What prayers or curses do you whisper under your breath? Overseeing this operation was a man named Adoniram. His title? Minister of Forced Labor. It was not a job that made friends. Years later, after Solomon's death, the northern tribes demanded relief from the heavy workload. When the new king refused, they grabbed Adoniram and stoned him to death in the street. But there was another man watching, a young official named Jeroboam. He supervised the labor gang, saw the exhaustion up close, witnessed the resentment building. After Solomon died, Jeroboam led those same northern tribes in rebellion. Their rallying cry? Recorded in Scripture. Your father made our yoke heavy. Lighten it. The temple's construction planted seeds. Seeds that would eventually tear the entire kingdom in two. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Because right now, 183, Zuzan workers are swarming the construction site. Hammers should be ringing, chisels cracking, supervisors shouting orders. And yet visitors to Jerusalem during those 7 years all reported the same strange thing. Silence. Complete silence. How is that even possible? No hammer sounds, no chisel sounds, no iron tools heard anywhere on site for 7 years. On the most ambitious construction project the ancient world had ever seen. This isn't legend, it's recorded in Scripture. 1 Kings chapter 6 verse 7. In building the temple, only blocks dressed at the quarry were used. No hammer, chisel, or any other iron tool was heard at the temple site while it was being built. Read that again. 183,000 workers, millions of stones, 7 years of construction, and complete silence. Why would Solomon impose such a strange rule? The answer goes deep into ancient Israelite belief. Iron meant weapon, weapons meant war, war meant blood, and blood could never touch the dwelling place of the God of peace. Exodus chapter 20 had established the rule centuries earlier. If you use a tool on an altar, you will defile it. Deuteronomy reinforced it. Altar stones must remain uncut. Solomon took this principle and extended it to the entire building. Every wall, every floor, every threshold, all of it treated as sacred space. The house of peace would be built by peaceful means. Silence wasn't just practical, it was worship. But how do you actually pull this off? How do you construct a massive stone building without any metalwork on site? The answer is something we now call prefabrication, and Solomon's engineers executed it at a level that still impresses architects today. Every single stone was cut to exact specifications miles from Jerusalem, measured, shaped, smoothed, finished completely, then transported to the construction site already complete. When the stones arrived, workers simply positioned them. No trimming, no adjusting, no modification. Like ancient Lego blocks, each piece had a designated spot, and they fit perfectly. Think about what this required. No computers, no laser levels, no standardized measurement tools. Every quarry team had to work from identical plans. Every stone had to match down to tiny tolerances. One mistake, one block cut too large or too small, and entire sections would fail. The precision is staggering. The main source for these stones? A massive underground quarry directly beneath Jerusalem itself. Today it's called Zedekiah's Cave, or Solomon's Quarries. 5 acres of caverns, tunnels extending 200 meters into solid bedrock. The stone pulled from there is called Malik, royal stone. It has a remarkable property. While underground, the rock is soft, easy to cut and shape. But once exposed to air, it hardens to marble-like strength, perfect for precision work. Descend into those quarries today. The air is cool, damp, the silence is total. The same silence that filled these tunnels 3,000 years ago. Run your hand along the walls. Feel the ancient chisel marks. Still there after 3 millennia. Somewhere in this darkness, 80,000 men spent years carving stones by torchlight, shaping blocks they would never see placed in the building above. Every mark they made was an act of faith. Faith in a plan they couldn't fully see. Faith in a temple they might never enter. 7 years passed, $590 billion in treasure, 183,000 workers, millions of stones carved in darkness, assembled in silence. And finally, it was finished. But the construction was never really the point, what everyone had been waiting for, what all the sacrifice and sweat and silence was leading toward. That moment was still to come. The day finally arrived. All Israel gathered, thousands upon thousands packed into Jerusalem, filling every street, every rooftop, every hillside with a view of the Temple Mount. Solomon stood before the massive bronze altar in the courtyard. Behind him rose the structure that had consumed 7 years of his reign. Walls of white stone gleaming in the sun, cedar beams filling the air with fragrance, and gold everywhere. The walls, the floors, the ceiling, the doors, all of it covered in gold so thick that sunlight reflecting off the surfaces hurt to look at directly. But the building wasn't the point. What mattered was inside. The priests lifted the Ark of the Covenant, Israel's most sacred object, the golden chest containing the stone tablets Moses had carried down from Mount Sinai. For decades, the Ark had rested in a tent in the city of David, where Solomon's father had placed it. Now it would finally have a permanent home. The procession moved slowly, reverently, through the great doors, into the holy place, past walls covered in gold, past floors covered in gold, past cedar beams overlaid with more gold, then into the innermost room, the Holy of Holies, a perfect cube, 20 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, 20 cubits high, walls of solid gold. 2 massive cherubim stood inside, carved from olive wood, overlaid with gold, each one 15 feet tall. Their wings stretched out, touching tip to tip, forming a canopy over the space where the ark would rest. The priests set the ark beneath those golden wings. They stepped back. They withdrew from the room, and then it happened. 2 Chronicles chapter 5 records the moment. Then the temple of the Lord was filled with the cloud, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud. For the glory of the Lord filled the temple of God. This wasn't fog. This wasn't incense smoke. This was the Shekinah, the visible, tangible, overwhelming presence of the living God. So thick the priests couldn't stand. They fell to their knees. Some fell on their faces. The same men who had carried the ark, who had walked those gold-plated floors just moments earlier, now lay flat on the ground, unable to move, unable to speak. Think about what this moment meant. For 7 years, 183,000 people had worked in faith. They cut stones they would never see placed. They carried gold they would never touch again. They built a house for a God they couldn't see. And now he showed up. Every sacrifice validated. Every drop of sweat redeemed. Every stone carved in darkness, justified, God moved in. Solomon, still on his knees, lifted his voice in prayer. Words recorded in 1 Kings chapter 8. But will God really dwell on earth? The heavens, even the highest heaven, cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built? The heavens cannot contain him. And yet he came anyway, to a building made of stone and wood and gold, built by human hand, assembled in silence. It should have been the happiest ending in history, but empires don't run on glory alone. And the bills for Solomon's temple? They were about to come due. The gold ran out. Not immediately, not all at once, but eventually, the bills came due. 20 years of wheat shipments, 20 years of olive oil, thousands of workers fed and housed for 7 years straight. Even $590 billion has limits. When the temple was finished, Solomon still owed King Hiram a debt he couldn't pay in grain or oil, so he paid in land. 20 cities, handed over to Tyre, Israelite territory given to a foreign king to settle the account. Hiram traveled south to inspect his new property. He walked through the towns, looked at the houses, surveyed the fields. His verdict? One word: Kabul. Worthless. The most expensive building in history had cost Solomon pieces of his own kingdom, and Hiram wasn't even impressed with what he received. But land wasn't the only price. Remember Jeroboam, the young official who supervised the labor gangs? He saw everything. The exhaustion, the whip marks, the men who collapsed under stones and never got up. After Solomon died, the northern tribes sent representatives to Solomon's son, the new king Rehoboam. They had one request: "Your father made our yoke heavy, now lighten the harsh labor." Rehoboam refused. He promised to make things even harder. Within weeks, the kingdom split in two. 10 northern tribes followed Jeroboam into rebellion. They formed their own nation, built their own temples, rejected Solomon's dynasty forever. The United Kingdom David had built? Gone. The empire Solomon inherited? Shattered. All those years of forced labor, all those backs broken carrying stones up mountainsides. The resentment had been building for decades, and it finally exploded. The temple that was supposed to unite Israel under one God became a symbol of the oppression that tore it apart. But the building itself still stood. For 373 years, Solomon's temple dominated the Jerusalem skyline. Priests offered sacrifices. Pilgrims traveled from distant lands. The gold-covered walls continued to blind visitors in the afternoon sun. Then came Babylon, 586 BC. King Nebuchadnezzar's army surrounded Jerusalem. They breached the walls, burned the houses, slaughtered thousands. And then they reached the Temple Mount. They stripped the gold from the walls, carried away the bronze pillars, looted the sacred vessels. Then they set fire to everything that remained. The cedar beams David had dreamed about? Ashes. The stones cut in silence. Rubble. The Holy of Holies where God's presence had filled the room? Empty air above a pile of charred debris. 373 years. That's how long it lasted. Less than 4 centuries. For a building that cost more than any structure before or since. David spent decades preparing for a building he would never see. Solomon spent 7 years constructing it. 183,000 workers gave their sweat. Some gave their lives. $590 billion in gold and silver. Millions of stones carved in darkness, assembled in perfect silence. And 373 years later, ashes. But here's the strange thing. We're still talking about it. 3,000 years later, the temple Solomon built remains one of the most discussed structures in human history. More words written about it than buildings still standing today. The gold is gone. The cedar is dust. The stones are scattered across Jerusalem and beyond. Yet somehow it endures. Not in walls, in memory. David never saw the temple completed, but he poured everything into preparing for it anyway. Every talent of gold, every ounce of silver, every remaining year of his life, he built for someone else's future. The workers who carved stones in those underground quarries never walked the gold-covered floors above. They shaped blocks by torchlight for a building they would never enter. They built for something bigger than themselves. Solomon knew empires rise and fall. He wrote about it himself. Meaningless, everything is meaningless. And yet he built anyway. Maybe that's the real lesson hidden in all that gold and silence. The things that last longest aren't always made of stone. They're made of purpose, sacrifice, faith in something you might never see finished. David believed in a temple he couldn't build. Solomon believed in a God those walls couldn't contain. 183,000 workers believed their labor meant something, even if they never understood what. 3,000 years later, their faith still echoes. So here's the question worth sitting with. What are you building that will outlast you? What are you pouring yourself into? Not for today, not for next year, but for generations you'll never meet. David had his temple. What's yours?